Hey, welcome to this episode of Hollywood Breaks. Good to be with you this week. Keith and I are going to dive in this week to some of those inside politics of Netflix. Is the culture really changing, or is the big brother watching over their internal people? Because there's been a little bit of shakeup there. But we also make note that they hopefully are making progress in improving some of those Netflix quality movies by creating new leadership in the movie space. So we'll see what they're doing. We also cover our ideas of how G.I. Joe is going to take over the marketplace and be the next big franchise, possibly. And what this old movie is that M. Night's doing, and will that revive the theaters in a way that Quiet Place did? So stay tuned. Thanks for being watching, and we'll see you soon. Hey, are you looking forward to the new G.I. Joe movies coming out? Were you a G.I. Joe cartoon guy when you were a kid?
Was actually. I was. I loved the movie, the cartoon movie. It was one of my favorites as a kid. I mean, it's one of those things you watch now and you're like, wow, why did I like this? This does not really hold up. But the opening's cool. For those of you who are G.I. Joe fans, the opening of the cartoon movie, it's Cobra attacking the Statue of Liberty during a celebration, and it's got this really cool riff on the G.I. Joe theme song. So I have not been a huge fan of the movies, I'll be honest, as much as I enjoy Stephen Sommers as a person, because he directed Van Helsing, which is a movie I was a PA on, and he was really great to everybody. So I like him a lot, but I'm not a big fan of the movies. So although Snake Eyes is a cool character, so if he was one I would pick if I were sitting in Jim Giannopoulos' shoes, I would say, yes, Snake Eyes is the one you want to do the background on because it's the most interesting character. So, although I will not be.
So I asked my kids, of like, do they even know who G.I. Joe is? Because, I think for us, we had the figurine first. And then, of course, as a good Mattel brand did, it turns those figurines into content, right? So that's the experience we had. So we had almost a relationship with the characters and playing it in our imagination when we were kids. And so when it was on screen, it was a big deal for us. Mm-hmm. I think without that, are we going to know who this person is? Or are they going to give us enough background that we will, even if you're not familiar with the character, will they give us the right background to it? So it would be great for my kids to know what G.I. Joe is. It'd be great for my kids to know what Evil Knievel is. That's some really cool things that we had when we were kids.
Well, I the first movie was a success, and which is why they made a second one. But I don't really know if it penetrated enough to make it worthwhile to make an origin story. I mean, they chose Snake Eyes because he's one of the most popular characters in the franchise. But I'm the same with my kids. I said G.I. Joe, like I was humming a theme song this week, and my kids are like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "It's G.I. Joe." "What's G.I. Joe?" And I'm like, "It's like soldiers." They're like, boring. Okay, I'm on to the next thing.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, cool. Listen, I don't know. I think their midnights were like 1.3 or something like that. Not spectacular. I think right now they're calling it mid-teens. I think they'll be fortunate if they get that. Obviously, a 2 would be a great thing for them, for Paramount, but I don't know if they're going to get there.
It's a good franchise play. So why not?
Yeah, you got to keep the franchise alive. I mean, look at Fast and Furious. Everyone said it's dead at 3 when they did that one in Tokyo, and all of a sudden they brought it back.
Now we just wish it was dead at 3.
Now it's not going to be dead till we hit Fast 150.
Yeah, exactly.
And they bring back a hologram of Vin Diesel. So
which we need a much more clever name. We need like a really clever name for 50.
Yes.
Or just like maybe when we hit the 20 and it's double X's, like FXX or whatever.
XX. Yeah, like do with the Super Bowl. You could do like FXIV or something like that.
So the movie that I worked on years ago, this Evil Knievel movie, is finally turned into a documentary and is coming out today on Disney Plus. I haven't seen it yet on Disney Plus.
Really?
It's called Stuntman, yeah. And I've been seeing all these promos, and the shot is Eddie Braun, who was the stuntman that reenacted Evil Knievel's Snake River jump and accomplished the jump. The rocket ship that's in there was literally in the back of my van. I had to drive it from Idaho to the place that we were building in Los Angeles. And my
Oh,
kid
nice.
Connor, who Connor was
Yes.
the guy, and Emmett was the guys driving it down to LA and dropping off at the model builder that put it up together. So to see that rocket ship is like just brings me.
See, that's a great story. Those are one of those legendary Hollywood stories that everybody has. Like I remember when I was working on the Sony lot, I would always be walking sort of by where they kept all the props, and there, right there, was Ghostbuster 1. And every time I'd walk past it, I'd want to walk in there and just sit in it, but I didn't have the guts to do it.
Oh yeah.
But I was like, oh my God, it's Ghostbuster 1. That's so cute. That's so cool.
But you have to bring your kids along. Like, so my kids met Eva Knievel through that project I was doing, and I started buying them Eva Knievel t-shirts and all that kind of stuff.
That's
and
cool.
I mean, to be honest, the Knievel family is, legendarily difficult to work with, and that was some of the issues we were coming in. So I'm glad that what we intended to make is finally come out with something else. And Dwayne Johnson was one of the EPs on the final film.
Oh, nice.
So I think that probably put over the finish line. But
yeah,
it's cool to see something come to completion. But yeah, it's to me, it's like the nostalgia, G.I. Joe, Evel Knievel, whatever this stuff is, to get our kids to appreciate what we appreciate.
It also gives a sense of the true reality of what we call development hell. Sometimes projects can just sit in morbidity for years upon years, and then all of a sudden they find a life, or they find a distributor, or whoever was causing the problems, all of a sudden is not as much of a problem anymore. And then you finally get the project out there.
No, in our case, we were greenlit for a Fox TV special live event when he was going to reenact the jump. Like, it was greenlit.
Oh, I think I remember this.
Jump. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
okay.
Totally ready to go.
Yep.
And then I think one of the Belindas or something like that had an issue earlier on in the same year, and that kind of frightened the network, and then they canceled all the high risk stuff. So there was someone going to Everest, and the Walendas were doing a thing, and we were going to do this Eva Knievel jump, and they canceled all high risk things. So we were frontline developing a live event. Slash is a good friend of the stuntman Eddie, and he was going to perform, a concert beforehand. It was like a really cool idea, and then it became like, okay, maybe we can just get it off the ground and get it over the.
And then maybe we can actually make it happen.
Yeah. Can we even just get the thing across the river? But the backstory is really cool, because the original engineer who was blamed for it not getting over the river, his son wanted to reenact it to prove his dad's rocket can make it. So there's a really cool backstory. I love being.
Oh, that's cool. Nice.
And Hollywood has that ability to, and then I'll say this, I think this is what I love about the OTT platforms, is Hollywood has this ability to find stories and pull them out, right? So you can relearn about, I don't know, the beginning of hip hop, the Straight Outta Compton movie was really insightful. Things
it took forever to get made. Nobody wanted to make it. Yeah.
But so OTT platforms like this, because it's a documentary, OTT has its ability to do it. And I think that's some of the fun stuff of having, this plugged in environment where Disney's picking things up, Netflix is picking things up, and things are being pulled out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
But as we said, some of their original content just suffers from it, I think, too. Yes. Trying to constantly produce original content, and the quality that's missing in making original content, especially Netflix, my favorite thing to pick on. It hurts. Yeah.
Well, you'll be happy to know that this has been kind of a bumpy week for Netflix. They've been in the news quite a bit. First off, there's sort of been a fallout, because Robin and I talked about this last week while you were sunning yourself at whatever tropical location you were at, Tim. And we talked a little bit about this.
I did miss you guys, just in case you know, I did miss you.
Likewise. He said with true sincerity. So we talked a little bit about this, that 3 senior marketing execs in the film marketing department were fired because they were caught talking smack on Slack about Jonathan Helfgott, who's a former Fox colleague of mine, and the CMO at Netflix. And it got to the point that Hollywood Reporter released the article, which is why we talked about it on Friday. And then Ted Sarandos comes out on Monday, I think, on LinkedIn, and tries to give more context to it, because I think they felt like they were getting a lot of backslash against, or pushback, I should say,
Yeah.
Against this idea of, like they were watching their Slack channels, which when you buy an enterprise account on Slack, as I explained last week, you have the right to get records of the conversations. He claimed that was not the case, and it was a lot more pervasive than just one or two, comments. It was an ongoing. There were several instances where they were talking smack, and Rob and I talked a little bit about this in terms of the context of the red couch that she had in her office, which everyone kind of used as a couch to come in, a safe space to complain, because you have to release it. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of comments on LinkedIn, some of which I thought were really smart. One person said, well, yeah, I'm sure if somebody walked up to the CMO and said, you're doing a crap job, they would have kept their job, because it's all about honesty at Netflix, open and honest conversations. And the bigger thing is somebody there saw it and turned them in. So it's very sort of like you're being watched. It's very Orwellian. For those fans of George Orwell who have watched 1984 or read 1984, and I'm sure that's been referenced to death, Big Brother, especially in the last 15 months. There's a very disturbing sequence where the main character, Rigale, is describing how his next door neighbors in the apartment have 2 young kids, and they're petrified of their kids because the party encourages the kids to rat out the parents. And you see, he describes this sort of like that they're walking on eggshells with their kids. Like, can you imagine? And it seems like that's really kind of what's happening here at Netflix. Yeah, and sure. It's crazy to me that it's kind of, and you can listen, I've interviewed at Netflix. The first thing they do when you agree to an interview is they send you that deck, which is like their culture. And, you have to sign on to this. If you come work here, this is your Bible. And then Reed Hastings releases that book that just talks all about that culture and how successful it is. And, to be fair, he opens it up to criticism as well. But this kind of thing, this creates a culture that I think is counter to what they're trying to build, which is this idea that you're constantly being watched. You can't be honest. And I don't know how that can be an effective way, especially if you're a creative business. It's different if you're just putting out DVDs, right? But when you're a creative business, you can't have this sort of pervasive, like, almost deep state Big Brother watching you, or your own coworkers watching you. Like, that's the other thing.
There's probably, there's definitely a disturbing part of this idea of, like, if you're talking about open and transparency, then the criticism, no matter what form it is, on Slack or to someone's face, should be part of it. I mean, there's honest, critical conversations you can have that people might be offended when they first hear it. But my understanding here is that the people that the offense was against were the ones really saying, I don't need to fire this person. I'm okay with some honest feedback. To me, it's really this secondary idea of trying to cover up the culture again. It's the second release invasion, the stuff that's happened on Monday, where it's like, no, we're an open, transparent company. We're not firing them because, and you're like, please, let's just recognize, maybe what we should be recognizing is that the evolution of the culture is actually changing. Like, there was kind of a utopian beginning to it, but then reality of just trying to get the work done, which they really just need to get the work done. I mean, there's way too many films coming out of that pipeline, and people just need to go do a job. Do I have to buy into the whole culture to be an expert in my field and get stuff done at their studio? Or can I just go and do it the way I know how to get things done? I'm sure I could take open criticism, but not need to. Yeah,
I think I mean, again, having interviewed there, I know colleagues who have worked there. That's how they operate, and I think it's the culture is very important to Netflix. Again, that was established before they became a creative company. So I think we're starting to see the sort of the butting of heads in terms of those two ideologies. And your point about there just being so much product is well taken, because they also announced, I think it was last Friday, actually, I don't even know if it was this week, that they've promoted Ori Marmer and Kira Goldberg to sit alongside Tendo who is the current head of the film division. And they now have basically three heads of Tenen Ogenda, I think is his name. They now have three heads of the film division. So, and obviously their reasoning for doing it was, hey, we've got a lot of movies that we got to get out. We need more, senior executive. My reading between the lines would be more along the lines of what you've been saying, is that they're realizing the content issue, the what's the word I'm thinking of? The quantity over quality is starting to become a bit of a problem.
Sure.
And they need
maybe
to
if they have more hands-on leadership, they might be able to address some of the more creative issues.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
that churn and burn thing is like, I feel like there isn't any studio notes, to be honest.
No, like they're putting out like 80 movies a year, and I don't know how any one person could do that. So I get it from a sort of, you need more heads and more bodies to sort of help guide the ship. But at the same time, this on top of some of the changes they've made on the TV side and some of the gangbuster numbers that came out this week for HBO Max, Disney Plus, obviously crushing it with Loki. They've got a lot of competition now, and they know now that they can't just be top dog because they have 200 million subscribers. And their quarterly report this week was not stellar. They missed the mark with Wall Street, which, if you miss the mark with Wall Street, especially with you're a darling of Wall Street like Netflix, people are gonna notice. They try to defray that attention by talking about a little bit about gaming and how they're diversifying their content offerings, so they're just not relying on TV and movies, which I think is smart on their part, because they're going to need to do that, because they'll be the first, really, because Disney Plus hasn't done it yet, HBO Max hasn't done it, Peacock. There's other players getting into the game. We've had Sean on Gearbox Software talk about what they're doing on the content side. Riot Games is hiring ahead of film and ahead of TV. They want to get into it too. So there's a lot. Yeah. There's a lot happening, and I think they know that the more marks they miss, that it's going to get tougher for them. So I think they're realizing the day of Netflix being the king of the OTT hill may be coming to an end.
Well, or at least the challenge is going to make them step up their game, because they could still be a front runner very easily. I mean, they established the platforms, but I could see too just the shift that's happening with families going on vacation, not sitting around watching television. This whole peak that we've experienced over the last 18 months with from stay-at-home orders to waiting for vaccines to come out, and now just honestly more competition. The theaters opening it up, even though it's not opening up strong, and the theaters are still kind of suffering from it. It's still additional competition to just sitting at home and watching TV. So I'd be curious what's going to happen with Disney and Disney Plus's numbers, how much they slow down over the next 3 or 4 months. I'm sure Netflix is taking a hit. And I mean, what else do we have that came out? Besides Netflix, Hulu, and Disney Plus, HBO Max is taking a piece of my paycheck now, and Peacock Peacock's not taking a piece of my paycheck, but they should be trying to.
They will be eventually.
Yeah, they should be trying to, because I don't know. Well, maybe not with the numbers that they have. They might be giving away for free for a while. Yeah. But there's more and more draw to, and more places to watch. And how long we've been talking about the what to watch problem. Yeah, it just spreads out everyone's interest so far that I don't know what numbers we're going to count in the future for Netflix. Just look at subscribers and know that they're okay, or how much content they're making. But I would guess they could slow down on their burn rate of content. Do they really need to release 80 movies a year and keep up with
I think that's something that I think they need to start looking at, because I think they're also suffering somewhat from, they had the advantage when the pandemic first hit of having so many shows already in the can, or already in post, because they just constantly are shooting. And whereas a lot of movie studios and some of the streamers got, blinkered by the pandemic, and were in the midst of shooting and had to shut down, all their post schedules got delayed. Netflix had a few in the can. Now Netflix is starting to feel that pinch of the sort of the stop down on production for almost a year, 6 months to a year. And they're starting to feel that pinch with the lack of content, and the news, sort of the entertainment news, has been dominated by HBO Max with Mayor of Easttown and the Friends reunion, and then you have Disney Plus with all their Marvel series, and Loki, or not, Loki's doing well, and then there's the Pixar movie, the Italian Pixar movie, which apparently is doing quite well, which name escapes me. Hard to believe given that I have 2 young kids, but we haven't watched it yet. But
Luca.
So Luca, thank you. So they've been, I think they've been sort of in the back seat as far as attention getting with terms of content, because they just haven't had anything, and the stuff they have released, I just don't think has been as big of a hit as they've wanted it to be. They really haven't had a cultural sort of milestone since Bridgerton, really. And I think that's, when your competitors are dominating, the news and, the cultural conversation with their hits, then that's going to bite at the end of the day. And we don't really know the number, we don't know the numbers yet. This is the ongoing conversation about how many streamers are people, what's the limit? When before this all started, there was surveys say 3 to 4 is the max people will have per month. And there will be churn because people will watch their favorite, they'll binge the show they want to watch and then resign or, drop the service and then come back when the next season comes on and not stay on. I think those numbers we're still trying to figure out what that looks like. I mean, I think every service wants to reduce the churn, and keep as many and grow the subscriber base. That's what they want to do. I just don't know. We don't know if that's what it's going to look like because the pandemic changed everything and habits are still shifting, I think. So it's a tough game. I mean, listen, they're still dominating because they've got 200 million, but Disney's on their heels, although Disney Plus has definitely leveled off for the last quarter or so. But it's going to take, once those Star Wars, that Obi-Wan show comes out, I guarantee you they're going to see another push up in terms of that, because I'm sure a lot of people want to watch that, and especially with Vader's going to feature in it. They brought Hayden Christensen back for that. There's a lot of things that are happening there, and then who knows what Marvel's going to do next. The Loki, I haven't seen the last few episodes, but from what I've read, I'm not going to reveal any spoilers, so I'm not going to give a spoiler alert. But from what I've read, they've sort of opened the idea to a multiverse similar to what DC has. Could open a whole other.
And bring back past characters and that kind of stuff.
Bring back past characters. Also,
because we got to see Iron Man at least one more time.
And then you got Into the Spider-Verse, which was the multiverse in the Spider-Man era. So, and they haven't touched X-Men yet. They still have the Fox properties to mess around with.
Do you think that it's the feedback that the studio or the theaters are giving and the pushback they're giving to this Black Widow thing, basically saying, if it was a theatrical release, we was in a theatrical only release, we was in different numbers than if we were, dual release on Disney and Disney Plus and the theaters. Do you think that's a legitimate argument? I mean, there's probably some very obvious truth that I've well, if you only had it in the theaters, that's the only place to see it. The theaters would have made more number, or would have seen more numbers.
I mean,
but did it have any traction to say more people or less people saw it because of the way it was released, or everyone wanted?
It's tough to say. I mean, listen, there are a lot of theories floating around. One of the theories is, that this was, Black Widow. She's already dead, first off, and this was sort of an in-between between the final Avenger movies. And I don't know if that played a factor in it, or maybe people are just marveled out. It's tough to say. I mean, I don't know if everyone's rushing back to the theater, and I don't know if it would have been $100 million hit. I don't get the sense necessarily that that's a very accurate assessment. Listen, the theaters are fighting for survival, and they clearly want things to go. What they want is it to go back where it's just released in theaters, and then, okay, the windows has to shrink. We get that. So it goes back to that, and then a 45-day release window. But the financials that they release on Black Widow opening weekend, those are pretty decent numbers for Disney. Granted that what they get out of the 60 million that they supposedly made on Disney Premier Access, the numbers are all over the place in terms of the percentage that they get from that. They have to pay out a certain amount to Amazon and Apple for the platform hosting and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, there's not bad numbers. It gives them the flexibility to be like, okay, and listen, maybe this is sort of where Kareem Daniels' group is going to start to play more. Like, let's look at where this movie is going to play best, where the audience for this movie lives. Is it a theatrical play? Can we do sort of a, platform release in theaters and then release it premium on? It gives the studios flexibility, which is something they've been begging for. And the studios and the exhibitors have been hard pressed to like, no, we're not doing that. And Robin brought this up last week, what I think is a very setting point. They don't want to change. They just want things to be the way they were. I mean, when you go to a CinemaCon, with the exception of some of the independent owners, it's a bunch of guys, to be quite frank, who have been doing this for 30 years. And they just want to keep doing what they've been doing. They want to just come to these little events and smooze with its stars and go back to, and let's just keep things the way they are because it's been working. It's like, no, it hasn't been working. You've all just been sort of blinkered for the last 5 years or so. And now the pandemic, which we've said ad nauseum, has forced a lot of these issues to the forefront. And, I say this, I credit Universal with saying, okay, we'll work with you guys. And Paramount with saying, you know what? No, this is a theatrical release. And there will be movies like that. I mean, there will be movies where the sense is this belongs in theaters.
Well, and I saw it. I thought it was very perfect for a theatrical release. I thought it was well made. It was in the Marvel vein. It wasn't in the same production quality as the TV shows that they're coming up with. But there's something that I've been thinking about with that of it truly, you can tell it's the beginning of a TV show. If you wait till the scene after the credits with Julia Louis-Dreyfus, like they're basically saying, we're about ready to launch the next Loki, follow-up here from our movie to that. So as a Disney Plus release, you're like, maybe internally they said, well, let's keep it on the Disney Plus platform because this is just the premiere or the premiere for our new TV show. It's extra long and we'll bring in the Scarlett Johansson as the star to give us that launch point. But as a theatrical release, I thought it was pretty legitimate there. I think that the drop off is, one related to like the numbers were really great in the weekend. If I was telling somebody, hey, you should watch Black Widow, and they can tune into it tonight on Disney Plus, they didn't have to go to the theater and see it. So the word of mouth forced people to find the easiest possible path to seeing it. And I'll bet you, truly just the easy access to it, I'll bet you piracy. Like, why pay if your friend's willing to stream it over his iPhone from his TV set to your house? Like, the technology is there.
That's definitely a big issue, that the piracy angle, because it's basically a clean, unwatermarked copy of the movie available. And it was, I think, one of the highest, pirated movies on some of the several pirate sites. So I think that definitely lends to it. But again, I think it just shows that I should also say that because it's Disney, the exhibitors have always had a pugilistic battle with Disney. Like, Disney's always been sort of hardcore because they've got these big titles that everybody wants to see. So it's always been sort of the battle between Disney and the exhibitors. So this is not that shocking in a lot of ways, that they came out so forcefully against Disney. It's just the nature of the beast. And I'm glad they're standing up for their business, as they should. But at times they don't look at the issues within their own business model and their own experience, and just sort of blame it all on the studios not wanting to release just in theaters when they've been begging for this flexibility. And Disney now has the opportunity, and I think Kevin Feige is probably loving the fact that he now can tie a 13-hour series into his next phase in the Marvel movie universe. It just opens so many story angles and the ability to sort of tie it all together. And it'll be interesting to see, particularly with Loki and sort of the potential multiverse, whether or not that starts to leak into the movie universe, or whether or not they keep it exclusively on the Disney Plus. The platform.
Yeah, but I mean, you're exactly right. Kevin Feige's paycheck comes from Disney. It doesn't come from the theater.
Right.
So like, hey, I'm going to feed this machine as much as possible. And like we said earlier, like he has to compete with the Netflix machine, but
Yeah.
I think to stay within these strong brands that Disney has, as opposed to Netflix just making anything possible.
Yeah, and I will say I know that Kevin Feige is a big fan of theatrical experience. I mean, you all remember in December of last year, he was really the only one when they were touted out for that big investor conference, brought out to sort of talk about theatrical and really sort of say, we are committed to theatrical. And he loves sort of getting the numbers on Saturday morning, and he loves the idea of theatrical. He knows that Marvel is really a theatrical type storytelling, but I think the fact that now he has this avenue to explore on Disney Plus is just opened so many more opportunities. And, I think they want the flexibility to play around with it. And we'll see once things start to open up even more and everyone feels like the normalcy has returned, then maybe Marvel will be exclusively theatrical. But I don't think that time is here just yet.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So one last thing before we wrap up is this M. Night movie that's coming out, Old.
Oh, Old.
That's theatrical only, right?
Oh, yes, I believe it is. Yes.
Yeah. I truly can't wait to see it. I'm an M. Night fan. I love the twist out there.
Yeah.
It's a fun premise there. But also our buddies at Alchemy, they did
the visual effects
in there. So
yes.
Yeah.
So it's great. I'm happy because everyone here knows, I'm a big proponent of pulling the locust of entertainment away from New York and LA. So the fact that a visual effects shop based in New York and Philadelphia had the opportunity to work on a big M. Night movie, and M. Night's a big Philadelphia proponent too. He lives there.
Yeah, he is.
He shoots in Philadelphia pretty much, well, with the exception of Old, because I don't believe we have scenic beach property unless you want to shoot in a Jersey Shore, but that's a completely different movie. So I'm I loved M. Night when he first came out. He got a little rocky with Lady in the Water, and The Village was not my. I love Signs. I know a lot of people don't, but I love Signs. I think it's great.
Oh, Signs is good. I like Village though.
Yeah, Village wasn't bad. I mean, I love Signs for its Hitchcockian references, particularly with the opening title sequence where it just prepares you to be scared.
Yeah, very
and yes, I believe it's only theatrical. It's horror, so that's one of those movies that's perfect for theatrical. I'll be curious to see if this is one of the movies that falls under Universal's new deal with some of the exhibitors, as far as when things go to Peacock, and when they go to a platform, or when they go to SVOD.
Oh, sure.
And whether or not this is going to fit that mold. Because right now, as I said, I think last night they had 1.4 nights, and I think Snake Eyes was 1.3, 1.2. Which doesn't necessarily bode for a hearty opening weekend, but we'll see. I don't
Quiet
know.
Place was in the theaters for so long because
it's still chugging,
and it's a great experience. Yeah, so I could see this one coming in and competing with Quiet Place and having the same kind of long run.
Yeah, I will say though, Quiet Place did have John Krasinski basically flying all over the country, walking into theaters and getting people amped to see it. I think that having that kind of personality, he's very Hugh Jackman in that way, in terms of just wanting to work his butt off to get people excited to see the movie. I think that helps immensely. I don't really think Old really has that. I haven't really seen any press. Granted, I'm up here in Maine, not watching TV, so it could be all over.
No, I haven't seen much either,
but I haven't really seen much talk about it. And I think there's a lot of hesitancy in terms of what you spend on your marketing in this current environment. Versus just holding that spend down and then releasing the theaters with the hope that it will eventually go to Peacock and drive some subs there as well.
Well, I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna go see it and I'll report back.
Yeah, I'm curious. I have to drive about. I have to drive about an hour to get to a movie theater, so I don't think it's gonna happen.
Yeah, you're not gonna.
And yes, I did not harass you about your beautiful background. It's so lovely.
I even made this little tower of boxes for you so that you didn't have to see the rest.
It looks like it's a puzzle, like it's almost like a Rubik's cube that needs to be fixed.
I could have put it all together. Yeah. This is my zipline company, ziplinegear.com. So I'm
ziplinegear.com, ziplinegear.com.
Ziplinegear.com. And we'll put that in the notes just in case.
Yeah, we'll put that in the notes. That's
I was in the warehouse today and I was like, okay, you can't look at all the all the special stuff on the other side of these boxes.
Yeah.
So I built these boxes.
So pretty, Tim. So pretty. Well, I like I said at the pre-show, our viewers have gotten used to having rotating backgrounds. I basically have two. I have Maine and my beautiful, look like I'm in a sailboat office, and then I have my location in Philadelphia. You are the world traveler, so we never know where
wherever I need to be.
Wherever you need to be. So I think our viewers are going to be excited to see that there's another background that Tim has not quite used yet. We've had hotel rooms, Oregon, Orange County. So who knows what's next? Now we have your zipline company.
Keith. This is Hollywood. This is what it looks like.
This is what you got to do, man. You're making things happen.
All right. Speaking of traveling, we have to thank Lydia because she's on vacation in Turkey, but she still helped us produce the show today. So Lydia, thanks for keeping us on track. Thanks.
Lydia actually shows up, Tim. She shows up on vacation, unlike some people.
I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate my staff at ziplinegear.com and those
ziplinegear.com.
Backyard zip lines together. Letting me use the office space today. And I thank you and Robin for filling in for me last week. So
of course.
Visit my kids in Colorado.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. Kids. I know. They suck up a lot of time. I get it.
It's happening more and more.
Yeah.
Well, good to see you, my friend. I'm glad we are.
Always good to see you.
Make things happen. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe. Keep on subscribing and tell your friends about us. We appreciate you being part of what's going on there. By the way, we do have upcoming episodes where with some guests, and we'll come up with those shortly, so pay attention. But we'd also love to hear from you. If there's certain questions or ideas that you want to have that we need to address, or thoughts that you have about this stuff, please give us feedback in the comments. We'd love to hear more of that too. Until next week, it's good to be with you on Hollywood Breaks. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
we'll
Tim.
see you later. All right, bye.
See you next week.